Well, hello, everyone. Welcome to Soul Empowerment with myself, Nancy Stevens, David McLeod. Together, we are the sole co hosts of this really amazing time together. We have a really special show today. We are going to interactively move through all of our episodes, just taking the key nuggets and highlights of everything that we ourselves learned and what you learned together, and kind of step back and bring it up to the present, noting who we are now as a result of all the learning and discussions and sharing that we enjoyed with you and, of course, with each other. So today's show is an interactive highlight of all the nuggets of goodness, and there are quite a few of these to be had from all of our shows.
Yeah, that's true, Nancy. It's coming up. Well, I think our first show was in January of 2020,
Yeah. Oh,
and
wow.
we hadn't even entered into the official pandemic yet.
Mm-mm.
So a lot has happened in the last 2 years. I mean, it's been a really crazy period of time, and yet
Excuse
we
me.
decided. Oh, bless you. We decided to keep going and keep
Yeah.
sharing, because I think one of the things that must happen in this world and in the universe is uh, we have to work with each other to raise our own consciousness, to raise the consciousness of the planet. But we do that by doing our own work and elevating our own individual consciousness. And so I remember when we started, it was you and me and Stephanie, and we it was, the idea was we were going to have conversations about many different topics, all related in the concept of life mastery.
Mm-hmm.
And it really went well, and I enjoyed it a lot. Let's see, now our very first episode, let me find that, was called The Aware Soul, and we did that one on the 14th of January 2020. So in that episode, you remember we talked about just the concept of awareness and what it really means. And do you remember that one?
Not as much as you. I remember our first show. And I guess I do remember a little bit about, I played with the awareness being related to bringing that element of mindfulness in and through your daily awareness and perception. So that was my little takeaway from that very first show, was the process and practice of mindfulness running alongside awareness.
Yeah, well, I think from my perspective,
Yeah.
Awareness really is the cornerstone, or the foundation, if you like, of any personal growth program.
Mm-hmm.
You can't really do anything until you become aware of what is right now. And becoming aware means trying to remove yourself from the stories and the made up stuff in your head about what's going on, and simply observe what is, and simply observe it without without judgment or or commentary or any of that stuff. It just kind of reminds me, have you ever been out with somebody, just, I don't know, out walking, and it's a nice day, but there's a few clouds in the sky, and one of you looks up and says, "Oh, look, that cloud looks like George Washington," or something like that. Have you ever noticed that?
Oh, yes. Yep.
Well, so awareness to me is really kind of like going out, being with the clouds, simply observing them, and not necessarily acknowledging the patterns in your head that come up. Oh, that looks like George Washington, or that whatever. Can you see it as a cloud? Can you grok it as just water vapor that's collecting in the sky, and forget for the moment the patterns that your ego mind automatically wants to find in pretty much any stream of data.
Yeah. That's beautiful. Well, that was like it. There you go. Well, you brought me back. That is, I think, one of the key components of our first show and life mastery is how can we begin anything until and unless we have that inkling of awareness of
Yeah. Yeah. Awareness is the big starting point uh, for pretty much any process that you want to do. And of course, the next thing that you have to do once you are become aware, well, then we started talking about acceptance, because this is one of the other things that I've noticed in my life. Uh, Accepting something has been a challenge for me in some parts of my life, because my ego mind always wants to put its own spin on it. My ego mind wants to say this is a good thing or this is a bad thing, whereas acceptance is simply it's trying to eliminate that judgment altogether and simply say this is what is, and accepting it. I am who I am, accepting it. In particular, I think that's what we focused on, was self-acceptance, because
yeah.
yeah. And so you remember we talked about the myths of acceptance?
I do. Yeah. The myth of thinking that who we are was dependent on initially how we perceived out from us or our stories
Mm-hmm.
versus just letting it be a really positive energy that doesn't have to be attached to something.
Right, exactly. And the idea that if I accept something, that must mean that I agree with it, or that
Mhm.
I condone it, or something like that.
Mhm.
That's not what acceptance is. Acceptance is simply saying this is what is, and not, you don't have to be okay with it. You don't have to say, you don't have to say to yourself, this is something that I want to continue creating in my life. But until you become aware of it and then accept that it is, you can't really do anything. You know, your journey is going to be limited by the perceptions that you have and the filters that you put on everything.
So that step of understanding or bringing in acceptance without the limits, constraints, stories, just being with it opens the door to growth.
Right. It frees you up so that you can um, just be okay with what is, even if you don't necessarily like it, even if you perhaps decide that you want to change something. um, you can be okay with how it is now, and at the same time be looking for ways to improve it or heal it or change it or whatever.
Yeah, that's a pretty powerful component next to awareness first. Because
Yeah.
how often do all of us spend so much time battling and resisting, or being in the midst of it and thinking that this is what is, when how much more can be when you lay aside that and just accept that you're here for a reason in a season that doesn't need to define you and make it be what is, but to be okay with that and bring in the learning and the healing and the growth.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And the
Mm.
other thing that happens is once you're able to accept what is as it is, and hopefully, put your judgments and conclusions to the side, that opens the space for understanding who you are, who
Mm.
you really are, and not maybe the things that you imagine you are, like the stories that you make up about yourself. And so that's where we went next. We talked about um, our true essence. We talked about who we really are, you
Mm.
know, and so identity, I guess, becomes the next step in the process of life mastery.
That's a big one. Identity. We can spend we do spend all of our life growing into cultivating and fostering our identity that's freed from.
Yeah, and most of us, I certainly know this is true for me, and I know it's true for a lot of other people. Most of us, uh, we believe in a kind of a limited view of ourselves based on what our ego mind tells us. You know, we often, I mean, how many people identify I am strong, for example, relating to the body,
Yeah.
or I am sick, also relating to the body. Uh, these notions, we tend to identify with our body, right? The ego mind certainly tends to identify with the body. So if the body is under threat, or if it's going to die, then we assume that that means I'm going to die. Well, of course, it's not really true, but it's something that we all have to kind of, what's the word I want to say? We have to unravel that way of thinking in our life so that we can get down to the truth of who we really are, which isn't a body, and it's not a job description. It's not, your feelings. I mean, you do feel things, but you are not your feelings. You are the experiencer of those feelings. Same thing with the thoughts that you have. You may or may not be the creator of those thoughts, but you certainly are the observer of them, and you probably are influenced by those thoughts. But to say that I am my thoughts is kind of limiting myself. You see what I'm saying?
Yes.
And that's the point that we tried to make in that episode, I think, was that we are far, far bigger and more important and more amazing than we have ever given ourselves credit for.
Yes. I think we've been taught to place so much identity with our thoughts and feelings that those are the truth, or a truth meter for what is going on in life and what is real. Like what you said, what in fact, it's not the feelings or the thoughts that are real. It's the process of experience them that gives you the foundation to find yourself, to be yourself.
Yeah.
Now that's another could spend another several shows on. I mean, think of it. Yeah, that one is a pretty big deal. How many of us unconsciously or consciously just say, without doing it, just move into our thoughts and feelings as if those are the truth meters, the parameters setting the foundation for your life.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
That's good question.
Yeah. Yeah. Gosh.
Right. And then, of course, after we get a clearer sense of who we are, then we begin to look at, our choices. Many people think, as part of identity, I've heard it said, you are the sum of all your experiences. I've heard people say that statement. And I know that's not a true statement. I am not the sum of my experience. I see myself now as a divine, magnificent, spiritual being of light and love. And I happen to have all those experiences, which reflect little aspects of myself at each point of experience that happen. But they even collectively, they don't represent who I am, because there are hundreds of millions, billions, infinite numbers of additional experiences I could have that I haven't yet had. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So to limit ourselves by saying we are this or that or the other thing doesn't really serve the common good. So this brings the question of choice. What do I choose to believe about myself? What do I choose to claim about myself? How do I choose to show up in each and every moment? What choices do I make that influence and impact the world? And am I okay with those results? See? So choice is a really, really crucial element of the life mastery process, something that most people don't really think about.
Choices. Yeah, I was reading this morning a little bit in a book that I just like to pick up, The Seat of the Soul. And pretty much, although we are powerless over many things, we are power in having the power to choose. We each have that power of not saying my life has been chosen for me, but we have the power each and every moment to choose what we align with, how we posture ourselves, the thoughts in our head. And taking that a step further, what we choose to focus on or align with, hopefully if it's good, you'll bring in that. But if you're choosing to think that everything is a struggle, a drama, difficult, is scarce, then you're going to, by choosing to align with that, whether you want to or not, you're going to bring that into your life.
Exactly.
It is, yeah. So you're bringing that, all of that awareness, acceptance, identity, and that powerful ability to say, we get to choose. We've been given the gift of choice. We may not have the ability, the power over what happens during that day, but we can choose how we relate to what has occurred, what's going on.
Right.
We choose that. We can choose.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I mean,
Mhm.
in some circumstances, if you were to look at what are my options for this particular situation, you might come to the conclusion that all of the options are going to lead to bad outcomes, and so you ultimately choose one of the options that seems to have the least bad outcome. Again, you're only making the choice based on what truth you know about yourself right now and what knowledge you have about the situation at hand right now. You
Mm-hmm.
can't do better than that.
Yeah.
At least not while we're still in this physical
Yep.
body, you know. Maybe in a highly spiritual sense we can do better than that. But as long as we are still in this physical body and still, connected to an ego mind who has an objective of keeping us safe, supposedly, then we may not always recognize all the possible choices that are available. And so therefore we may imagine, I have no choice in this. I have to do this thing here.
Oh yeah. How many times have you heard that? It's this is my choice, A or B, and as if that was a hard and fast lockdown. And our choice is based on our perception of our comfort level in our own energy. So if we
Yep.
feel uncomfortable in our energy, maybe having moved from relying on looking for other people or energy to dictate, if we're not stable with that, then we're going to act as if this is the only choices I have. Now
Correct.
there's so much richness to be cultivated and so much more to be done when we as a collective feel very powerful and comfortable in knowing that we get to choose. That's not at the marginalizing or disempowering others. It's us authentically moving into that choice from a really balanced place. And that's been a life lesson of mine. I think I was one back in the day, was like, oh, this is just the way it is. I've nothing I can do. I'm helpless. I've tried everything, right? Oh, this is the only choice I had, to be more miserable or just to
Yeah,
do.
right.
In fact, that is just the complete untruth. That is the ultimate of telling the universe, yep, go ahead, heap on some more hardship. Let it
Right.
rip.
That's
Okay,
right.
well,
Well,
there
and the other side of it is, and most people don't really think about this too much, every choice I make is an expression of who I am choosing to be in that moment. So when I choose A, it's because there's a part of me that kind of resonates with A,
Mhm.
even if A is not necessarily good for me. You see?
Mhm.
And and this is where a lot of people have a hard time. They say, well, sometimes shit just happens, you know?
Mhm.
Well, okay, maybe that's true, maybe it isn't. But on some level, all of us invite that stuff into our lives.
Mhm.
Why? We need to work through some karma. We need to have an experience to help us to elevate our consciousness. We need to, who knows? We need to learn compassion or forgiveness for somebody else in the process. Whatever the case may be, every single experience that we have in this physical life serves a purpose and allows us to experience and express ourselves more fully. That's the important thing for people to understand.
Yeah. And that's a a concept, a process that takes the becoming aware to bring that in.
Right. It brings it to a whole new level.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That really, that really does. So what part of our show was this conversation in? What do you know what episode that was, or what
Well,
it's?
I mean, it was part of the whole choice
Yeah.
episode, and I know that we've talked about it in other
Oh,
episodes
yeah.
as well. But you know what I mentioned about compassion and forgiveness.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the next two shows we did were about those two very topics.
Yeah.
First, we have to learn compassion for, for the suffering of the world. And compassion doesn't mean that we necessarily just, go out of our way to try and heal every problem on the planet. What it means is that we have a kind of an empathy for the suffering of other people, and a desire, some kind of a desire, an internal desire to create healing, whatever that might look like. However, we also have to remember that sometimes people have to go through their own suffering, and our jumping in and saving them from that suffering is not necessarily going to serve them. So when compassion comes into play, we have the power to make a choice here to check in with the person and find out if they want help, if they want support, or if they would prefer that we just stay out of the way, you know? To me, that's the important aspect of compassion that many people don't really think about.
Yes. I'm processing that right now. So just having that love, well, that deep care and connection with ourselves, and giving that out from us to others with empathy and compassion is where you find that balance.
Right.
Yeah, that is another very large life mastery topic. I know we've discussed. If you are in process, and we all are always in process, I believe that with my core of really loving ourselves, every aspect of ourselves, the shadows, the parts that are easy to showcase, and the parts that are, you know, are a challenge. As we move into a place of acceptance, self acceptance, self compassion, how much more then can we understand the human condition of suffering and extend that empathy, not from a place of ego, I need to save you or fix you, but truly coming alongside another if they're wanting that.
Right. Yeah. And of course, with compassion, once we learn and practice compassion, become masterful at that, the concept of forgiveness then just kind of naturally appears on its own. It becomes easier to forgive people when we can understand that we're all going through the same kinds of struggles here on this earth,
Mhm.
and the people who seem to do us harm are not necessarily doing us harm because they want to harm us, but because they maybe just don't know any better, or maybe they haven't learned some of the skills, or it's just a mistake or whatever. It doesn't really matter why they do it. The question is, can we forgive them? Because forgiving them means that we release our own desires for righteousness or justice or revenge or any of that kind of stuff, which is really all coming from the ego anyway. And forgiveness allows us to reconnect to our soul. So that's kind of what we talked about in that episode. And yeah, it was powerful.
Yeah, that was one of my top favorite episodes because it is such a powerful energy playing with forgiveness. I mean, we can again, each one of us can count up all of the supposed wrongs that were done to us, how we might have been unjustly treated, or power struggle, money, just life happening to us. And yeah, it can be so easy to play the victim and to harbor that energy of holding, regret or revenge, or, wanting to see justice served. I mean, we can do that on a larger scope of the world, but knowing that each and every one of us is all we want to be is cared for and loved. And that is love is the counter, is that ability, the energy that gives us the ability to forgive from a place
Exactly.
of openness versus, thinking that, oh, I've like you said, oh, if I forgive you, that means I'm weak or I'm accepting what you did. And it's
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, forgiving doesn't
yeah.
mean you agree or condone or anything like that. It just means you're giving yourself permission not to
Mhm.
hold on to some desire for revenge or getting even or all that stuff.
Yeah.
And when you release that, you basically liberate yourself. The other
Mhm.
person doesn't even have to know that you've done that. It can be a completely quiet and private experience. Just go and do a little meditating or
Yeah.
praying or whatever it is you do, and see yourself just releasing that person and whatever energy they might be holding on to from you, and just say, I completely release this. I forgive you, and that's it. We're done. You don't have to remember them. You don't have to, spend any more time with them. You don't have to do any of that stuff. What you're doing is you're liberating yourself. And that's the important thing for people to understand about forgiveness.
Yeah, I think so many people have it. I mean, I think at the core, we supposedly know that, but I think in our society, we've somehow turned forgiveness into, like you said, making it about being okay with what happened, or I don't know, or like you said, accepting or condoning it when that's that the opposite is true. You're removing your energy from holding space for that event that is now past.
Right.
You've invited in by releasing positive healing energy to come in place of what once was a very low vibrational negative energy. You're saying, okay, I've lived with this. This got me nothing and nowhere other than really living in the past, constantly rehashing it or flourishing it. When I've backed away from that which is now past, liberating myself, how much more can I go and flourish and thrive? I mean, it's not to say that that event wasn't hurtful or painful or, had a lot going on with it, but it's no longer occurring. And
Right. Exactly.
bringing in that, yeah, that's again, that could be another series of shows.
Oh, I know all of these topics are uh, so amazingly powerful, and
Yeah.
uh, you could spend a lifetime studying each one. And that's
Yes.
really what mastery is about. You know,
Yeah.
you don't necessarily. It's like I like to say, enlightenment is a process. It's not a destination. You
Hmm.
know, while okay, there may be some people who have achieved the maximum level of enlightenment on this planet. Those people are few and far between. For the
Yeah.
rest of us, enlightenment is just a process, an ongoing, increasing level of awareness and acceptance and all the rest. We do this whole process of life mastery over and over again. And that's why we're calling this cycles of learning.
Yep. Because it is a cycle. Then we go through one learning cycle, arriving in a different place. And then, lo and behold, there comes another learning cycle. What we learned from that previous one, hopefully, all the good stuff, we can then give ourselves the gift of that learning to help us process through the next stage of learning. So, yeah, and just to see the process of life occurring to us is part of the fabric of being alive. And as we change, we grow and become.
Right.
Yeah.
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 And then, of course, after we talked about forgiveness, we moved into the notion of purpose and how we find our purpose.
Mm-hmm.
And remembering that our purpose really is it emanates out of the truth of who we are. It's not necessarily something. Well, I don't think the purpose is ever something outside of ourselves. Like I have to go and build this whole civilization or something like that.
Yeah.
There's probably something much deeper inside the body. I don't like to use the word body because it's associated with the soul, not so much with the body, but
Yeah.
something within me that is driving me to create more love in the world or something like that. And how that manifests physically in the world is going to depend on, like you and I might, for example, have exactly the same purpose, which is to create more love in the world. That might be our purpose. But you have one way of doing it, and I have a different way of doing it. And both of those are perfectly good ways of doing it, right? And they may be very different. And that's the important thing for people to understand. Your purpose is going to be something that you could say in a short sentence, And I'll talk about my own mission statement, which is I create universal harmony by modeling, fostering, and facilitating authentic magnificence. That is my mission statement. Now, it sounds kind of esoteric, doesn't it? How do you foster, facilitate authentic magnificence? Right? Well, to me, it means something on a soul level. And so what I try to do is everything I create, from my Life Mastery TV show to this soul empowerment show to my soul memos, all of those pieces are little expressions of that mission, in my view.
Mm-hmm.
Okay?
Yeah.
So they all serve that mission, and I still have that nice, succinct, 10 or 11 or 12 word sentence that I use to help me remember what my purpose is. So when it comes time to make a choice, I ask myself, is this in alignment with my purpose? See?
Yeah, that's a very foundational. Yeah, the purpose show, another show on how, if you are floundering or wondering, what is my purpose? How do I find it? You're digging down into the essence of your own personal resources, your own truth.
Exactly.
Coming up with that mission statement, which I love that. I love your mission statement.
Maybe we should do an episode on creating a mission statement. That could be fun.
Yeah. How many, that's like a little doable, usable blueprint or a guide piece. Like you said, is what I'm speaking, what the work that I do, how I live, is this in alignment with my mission statement?
Yeah. And that's what brought us to the next episode, which is all about integrity, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I think we called it your navigation system or something. I can't remember the title right off the top of my head, but your integrity, well, most people think of integrity as my words and my actions are lined up. I always do what I say I'm going to do, and I always mean what I say, that sort of thing. But there's more to it than that, because it's possible to have your words and actions in alignment and still be out of integrity. So, for example, I might agree to do something, and then I follow through on it. But deep inside, I'm feeling a lot of conflict because it's not really in alignment with who I am. And so my feelings and my emotions and my thoughts might be completely opposed to that, if you like, that choice of words and actions. So I could still be out of integrity, even though outwardly, from your perspective, it looks like I am in integrity. And that's really, really important. So the way I describe it, integrity is a state of being in which my thoughts, words, actions, and emotions are all lined up. And I've got this fifth thing here. That's my purpose. So when my purpose comes into play here, and all those pieces line up in alignment with my purpose, then I feel like I'm in integrity. And I believe that is a far more accurate description of integrity than what we have been led to believe.
Yeah, that kind of brings me up. So we have a more one-sided view of integrity as being just this one piece. And as you just explained, it's a process of
right.
many pieces that factors
right.
in.
And so we talked about purpose and the importance of finding that purpose. But yet then we get to use that purpose to help us stay in alignment and be fully in integrity with who we really are and with what we're here to do. That's the whole beauty of those two pieces when taken together.
The purpose and integrity piece. Yeah.
Right.
All another foundational, really key life mastery piece.
Right.
For authentic.
And I think I think the episode that we did on integrity, which if I check, we called integrity, navigate your life. I think that was the final episode that that Stephanie was with us. And then after that, you and I were on our own ever since.
Yeah.
So the following episode was all about shadow. The shadow knows, I think we called it. And why did we bring shadow in then? Do you know why? Do you remember why?
I don't know. Illuminate me. Because of integrity.
Well, because of integrity, yes. It was exactly that point. If you check in, remember I have these things. If you check in with yourself and you find yourself being out of integrity, and one of the ways that you can do that is by looking at your agreements or your commitments and say, okay, I agreed to do this, or I committed to do this. And you say, I'm not doing it, or I'm not feeling like it's something in alignment with me. What's going on underneath that? That's the question. If I let myself actually slip out of integrity and I'm not even aware of it, and then one day I suddenly say, oh my God, I'm out of integrity. Now you get to look at what might be pulling you away from that alignment, right? And often there's a subconscious part of yourself that is resisting staying in that alignment for whatever reason. And this is when some shadow work can come into play. So you can get to acknowledge and understand a part of yourself that, for whatever reason, is not allowing you to stay in integrity. And when you do that, now you start to learn even more about yourself. That's the beauty of the whole shadow work piece.
Yeah, the shadow episode I thought was a really pivotal episode, because as we begin to again use that awareness, acceptance, compassion to step beneath the shadows, there's, like you said, there's a lot of beautiful treasure to be found there. Shadows are not something to be feared or to feel embarrassed by or guilty or all of that. They're, like I said, they're a beautiful fabric of our lives, really meant to teach us and heal us a greater depth of how we live going forward, rather than, oh, this is just the junkyard of my, the junkyard of my, I don't want anybody to see that,
Right.
There's just so much. Yeah, I really enjoyed the shadows episode a lot as a key piece in continuing that growth cycle within and bringing that up and out.
Right. Well, we just basically scratched the surface on shadow in that episode. But right after that, then we started talking about relationship. Now, of course, relationship is something that we are in everywhere in our lives all the time, right from the moment we're born, whether we're aware of shadow or not. But the reason that I have a relationship following shadow in the life mastery cycle is that once you understand about your own shadow and you begin to appreciate it and love it and start healing it, you can enter into relationship in a much more conscious way, knowing that all your relationship partners, no matter where they are in your life, and there are hundreds of them, maybe thousands, maybe even more that you have in your life. And I'm not just talking about your primary life partner. I'm talking about all the people you interact with. Every single one of them has his or her own skill at reflecting to you some aspect of yourself that you probably don't want to be looking at. And so understanding about your own shadow allows you to enter into your relationships more consciously, and especially if your partner also has done the work on the shadow part, so that you can say, I see that I'm feeling triggered about this because of such and such, and the way you're showing up, and it's reminding me of my mom or my dad or this thing, and I now feel like a little kid that wants to run away. All that stuff you can talk about once you and your relationship partner fully understand the notion of shadow.
Yeah, that's another really key aspect. Being in a relationship is to begin to understand that we unconsciously also project our story onto our significant other or those in a relationship with. Maybe that's from a place, again, that shadow area, and then maybe the same thing if they're in a place of finding, quote, finding fault with us, knowing that it's not necessarily at us. Typically, it's usually not. It's they're reliving their own story, and those stories coming out for tug of war. That I think if more of us understood that when it came time to have conversations that might seem more heavy or confrontational, to know that, oh, okay, it's not necessarily this moment something that implicitly was said or done. Our shadows are feeling empowered or scared, and they're trying to protect us, and they're running the show.
Yeah, that's
Gosh,
exactly
how often,
right.
yeah, if we could take that with us when we get into these conversations, workplace or home, when things potentially get heated, and we're feeling that intensity. It's like, oh, wait a minute, that's not necessarily the intensity of the moment. It's the shadows that have come up to protect us, or to get us to look the other way, or to do or say or do something.
Right. Yeah, it's a real interesting construct, this notion of relationship.
Yeah.
Most of us live most of our relationships without really understanding the nature of shadow, and the idea that somehow I keep attracting the same horrible person into my life as my partner. I hear that so many times from people.
Oh, yeah.
I keep inviting this abuser
Yeah.
multiple times in multiple different relationships, and well, there's something inside that you haven't healed yet that's probably looking for healing. And the thing is, if you can do that work consciously outside of your relationships, right, perhaps in a workshop or something like that, then you can become more aware of it. You begin to see how you are attracting these people into your life, and you can then start choosing something different. Once you are aware of the thing, and you know that it's not really serving you, then you can say, well, I guess I'll just have to start choosing something different. All right, what do I want to choose that's different, and how do I want to make this work? Do I want to heal this relationship? Do I want to make this relationship better? Or do I want to leave this relationship and move to something else that will be more supportive and empowering for me? These are questions that we all have to ask. And sometimes we don't like the answers that we come up with.
No, growth can be good, but it can really bring a weightiness to it when we're in a process of staying in the status quo, quote, staying safe, even though we're feeling uncomfortable and out of body. That's a key aspect to, again, with that enlightenment piece, to know that, okay, what is this relationship teaching and asking of me? And I love the attraction part. Why, when people get in and out of relationships, why do I always seem to go back to this same type? Why am I bringing in people that need healing or are combative or are, whatever? Right. So you're making it about them when it's
right. And the thing is, if you can ask the question without judgment, and one of the ways that I like to ask the question is, well, how is it serving me to stay in this relationship? How might it serve me to leave this relationship and find something new? What would be the cost? Many people, as you say, I think you use the word status quo. They want to stay in a relationship, not so much because it's the right thing to do or any of that stuff, but because people outside the relationship will probably have judgments about them if they leave it. That's what they're worried about.
Yeah.
And well, yeah, they're going to have judgments about you whether you leave the relationship or stay in the relationship. There's people have judgments about each other. That's just a fact of life. Are you okay with the fact that someone might have a judgment about you that you might not want to hear? I mean, are you certain enough in your true self that you're willing to say it doesn't matter to me what people think of me, or it doesn't matter how they judge me? I know the truth of who I really am, and that's what matters to me.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a beautiful life mastery piece as we move up the chain. Like you said, the cycle of mastery, completing what's at hand in our lives and processing that. But yeah, that's another major nugget of relationships, thinking of putting it all on that other person when in fact it's the opposite. It's the mirror. We are reflecting back what is ours to do the deep work on or to heal from. So you, like you said, I know one piece that you said, what is, no matter what the relationship, whether it's with a stranger or a one-time encounter or with a really long partner, I'm meant to heal from this relationship. I'm meant to learn. I'm meant to release. That each relationship, even though we may say, I screwed up, I should never, blah, blah, blah. It's like, that's actually not true. We're in our relationships.
Exactly right. Yep. Yeah, that's a really good point. I'm glad you mentioned that. It's not really true that you screwed up.
Yeah.
What is true is that you entered into a relationship for a purpose that maybe you weren't aware of. And now you can learn more about what that awareness really is about and begin to accept it and say, okay, I see what I'm here to learn now. And you might decide that, okay, I've learned it. It's time to move on. This relationship is no longer serving. You might decide that, or you might say, wow, I wonder what else I might learn from this relationship. And it's really a question of, again, coming back to choice, right? Yeah. And so what we went to next after the discussion of relationship was, once you can master the relationship aspect of your life, the next thing that happens is things seem to slip into an area of flow. You get to be more present, even when you are in action. And that's kind of the ultimate goal, I think, of life, is to be in that place of flow, to cultivate a life of flow, as we called it.
Yeah, I love, the flow is a very, that's a manifestation or a movement of all of the other areas that are more in alignment and more balanced. And we're able to recognize that we have within us a greater sense of harmony, peace, well-being, acceptance, knowing. But what else? How else would you describe flow?
Well, I think we you know about the power of now. You've heard of Eckhart Tolle, I'm sure, and what he teaches around being present to the current moment and all that kind of stuff. I think that's a wonderful, wonderful teaching. And the nuggets of truth, the deepest part of his teaching, the most important part is in the present moment, where you really truly exist. There's nothing wrong with you. There are no crises around you. That's all just imagination stuff. That is happening either in the future or in the past. But when you're right here, right now, you are here now. How can anything get more perfect than that? And that's really what his teaching is about. If you can stay in that place, even when you are busy doing something, then you experience what I call presence in action, or flow. So flow to me is precisely that, presence in action.
I want that every day. Do I have it every day? No, I don't. However,
Well, you really do have it. It's
Yeah.
just that your ego mind might be getting in the way, and reminding you of things that happened in the
Mhm.
past, or bringing your attention to these things you got to worry about in the future because hey, it's trying to keep you safe. Remember, hey, look out for that thing over there because this is going to happen. Yeah, if you can stay present to the current moment and just kind of quiet the ego mind. Say, thank you so much for that reflection. I appreciate it, but I'm in charge and I'm staying here now. You know, if you can do that, flow just kind of happens. And I know you teach yoga, so when you're in a yoga exercise process, you're probably not thinking too much about, or worrying too much about future
Mhm.
events or thinking too much about stuff in the past. You're probably thinking about how your body feels. You're thinking about the balance in your body and all this other kind of stuff, right?
Yeah, you're in the moment, in the
Yeah,
flow.
yeah.
Yeah, because
It's a beautiful place to be,
yeah,
isn't it?
it is. I think it opens you, well, obviously, when you're in the moment or in flow, you have more energy to really enjoy the season of life you're in, to embrace it, to see it as a means to learn, to see it as a means to receive, to see it as a means for you to share your resources with others, just to have that connection, not at the exclusion of others, but with the energy of inclusion, of being
Mhm.
filled with inclusivity. I think that's what a good thing that comes to mind with flow is that we are included, we are invited. We're offering that energy of including others versus excluding or having, posturing things within ourselves and with others.
Yeah.
Beautiful, beautiful point. Well, what else did we bring up?
Well, after our flow episode, we moved into gratitude.
Mm.
Grateful to the core, I think we called it. And here's what the way I see it: gratitude is kind of an energetic field that we all live in all the time. It's just that we're not necessarily always aware of it. And the more work we do on all these things that we've talked about, the more work we do on that, the more we become aware of this field of gratitude, and we can start to feel it in our body. And when you can feel that place of gratitude, uh, it's just amazing how quickly all the other worries of the world can just dissolve.
Hmm. The other supposed life concerns, events, or issues, and again, not to negate or take away at all what is at hand in the world, but nor are you taking away energy from yourself that is yours to be present in. Like you said, that just that keeping that really loving, positive energy field within you, keeping it on and using that as a means to live life in all of life that occurs, the happy
Yeah.
stuff or the unhappy or whatever, however you want to classify that. Yeah.
Yeah, it was pretty powerful. So, we've described now over the last 50 minutes or so about 12 episodes that we went through. And that represents one complete cycle of the life mastery paradigm that we've been talking about.
Mhm.
But as you mentioned, and this is something that you mentioned this at the beginning, when you come around, you're not really at the same point after you've gone through one cycle. You're at a
Mhm.
higher elevation. You've raised your awareness once you've gone through one cycle of life mastery. So in effect, we should have called this spirals of learning, because that's what it is.
Yeah, it
You know,
is. Yeah. Well, yeah, with each, I know who I am right now in this moment is not who I was a year ago in
right.
this moment. I've,
Right. And that's why I think we started talking about this idea of wandering aimfully. Remember
yes,
that?
yes.
That was a great topic title. I remember you came up with that one. I love
Yeah.
that type title. Yeah. Wandering aimfully.
Yeah, not aimless, aimful.
That's
It's,
right. Yeah. And
yeah.
that's really what life is about. If we can
Mhm.
keep our awareness at a high enough level, and if we can keep our understanding of who we are at a high enough level, then even though from an outside perspective it might seem like we're wandering, in reality we're moving towards a higher, I don't know, higher vision for ourselves. And it just happens to take a maybe not so straight path, you know? It goes up hills and down hills and around corners and who knows, through the water and over the veil and, you know, all that stuff. Yeah.
Yes. So here we are, you know, having gone through all of these cycles of learning of life mastery, only to begin it anew, so to speak, with all new energy, that when life emerges as it does every single day with the knowns and unknowns, each time that occurs, we have that much more wisdom, energy, and knowledge to apply to process this within ourselves and to share that really healing, helpful energy out from us. That's how I like to. The life mastery gives us the keys and tools to really hold our own space while we give that really good space to others. I think that's one of the beautiful outcome of
Right. And, you know,
continuing to master.
I think, well, soul empowerment is what we're here for, is to help people find a way to quiet their own ego mind and empower their own soul so that they can find the truth of who they really are and discover why they're here and all the rest of that stuff, and maybe learn some of these skills so that they can experience the same kind of joy and gratitude and aimful wandering and, you know, magic bullet myths and all this other stuff that we've talked about over the last couple of years. And, you know, I say we've got, how many more years do we have?
Right? Exactly. Yeah, it has been, from my own personal stance of being a co-host with you all these episodes, is my own growth and learning has been just really flourished and thrived by our candid, really authentic conversations within each of these, the vastness of these topics. So I personally have enjoyed our time together as co-host, and also sharing with our those who have come on live, and then I'm sure many people that have watched it later. It's just been a beautiful journey for sure.
Right, it has. And well, and we're not done. You know, we're not done. There's lots more to do. There's many more episodes that we've got in store. I think we already came up with one possibility this afternoon here while talking, the idea of helping people to come up with a mission statement. So maybe we'll do that in the next episode. Who knows? But the point I think I really want to make here is that life mastery is not a destination. You know, personal growth is not an endpoint into itself. It is a process. And you can keep going as long as you want to, you know, and you can decide that you maybe want to take a little break and, you know, I kind of like who I am right now, so I'm going to hang here for a while. Okay, perfect. That's great for you. You know, remember, everything is choice. And one thing that I have learned for myself is one thing I do know, I'll say this, you know, maybe this is not true for everybody, but I do know that I can't go back to that guy I was 20 years ago or 25 years ago or however long it was. There was just too much angst and anger and rage and all that kind of stuff that was happening back then. I much like the guy now way more than I liked him back then. And I'm sure a lot of people who've known me in both cases would agree with that. And that's something that you have to decide for yourself. If I like who I am right now, then I'm just going to stay here for a while. If I see opportunities for improvement, I'm going to take them. You know, and each person has to decide for himself or herself what's the right path.
Exactly. Yeah, you just described my journey from where I am now to where I was. I no longer was wanting to hang out with myself. I wasn't happy. I was filled with all kinds of more toxic, low vibrational energy. And without knowing how to get there or what to do, I simply knew that something better or more was waiting for me. And that began my story. And before we sign off, I am going to share with you guys. David and I are both authors in the latest Wellness Universe book that was just went #1 in 6 categories last week. It's available on Amazon. I think David has a copy of it. He's going to grab it. Ooh. So this book,
there you go,
Wellness Universe Guide to Complete Self-Care, 25 Tools for Goddesses, of which David is one, is just that. It has a lot of 25 amazing stories and tools with lots of nuggets. I am not saying that because I'm in it or David. The stories in this book are absolutely amazing, and the tools that accompany each story are growth promoting, insightful, supporting. So if you want to give yourself a beautiful gift or give a gift to another, hop onto Amazon and purchase this book. Just an incredible journey. So our life mastery has come full circle with us enjoying the inclusion of being authors in this latest really awesome book.
Yes. And, some people ask me, what is a man doing writing in a book about goddesses? And, that's an issue I had to deal with myself. When Anna Pereira, the founder of the Wellness Universe, first started, she promoted these books and the idea of getting a whole bunch of people to write chapters and that sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I love Anna and I love the Wellness Universe, and I decided I'm going to be in every book. And then volume 4 came out, and she puts the title 25 Tools for Goddesses. And I went, what? So I had to kind of figure out how to deal with that. And I contacted Anna and I said, look, is this okay if I submit? She said, absolutely, I want you there. I think she would have been happy if other men had stepped up as well.
Sure.
But I think, so anyway, I wrote a chapter, and I hope you'll pick up a copy of this book and read it. I mean, there's some, as Nancy said, there's some great stories in here, some fabulous tools. And I really hope that you'll, do yourself a favor and get a copy for yourself, and maybe buy a couple other copies for other people in your life.
Yes, I've ordered several copies to give as gifts and to keep in my personal library. At any given time, it's so good to have the support and encouragement, Kindle version or the written word, our show, to help us move us along in the game, the beautiful gift and end game of life. So,
yeah. Well, Nancy, our time is pretty much up here. So I want to say thank you again for being on the show with me. I'm looking forward to another year of amazing episodes. We might be doing a different time period. I don't know what that's going to look like. We're going to figure this out, and but we'll keep you posted. And meanwhile, for those of you who did join us live, thank you for being here. And if you're watching the recording, thanks for watching. Remember, the recording of this and every other episode is available on my website at yourlifemasterycoach.com. So you can watch all of the past episodes that we were talking about over there. And hopefully, if you head over, watch the episode and leave a comment on the page so we know that you've been there.
Yes.
That's really helpful.
Sharing is caring. Well,
that's right. Okay, well, I'm going to, bye-bye, Nancy, and thank you all for being here. I am going to end the recording now.
Yeah. Thank you so much, guys. Bye.